Hey everybody out there, my name is Dragnix, and this is a port report for Stranger of Sword City for the PC. While I will be doing a full review of the game in time, considering when I received it and how many hours it takes to beat, I wasn't going to get it done for embargo or launch on Steam today. But considering the performance of Disgaea on PC for launch, I felt it was important to get you guys information about the state of the game during my first 13 hours of gameplay, so those who go off the other reviews of the actual gameplay can now add the PC port element to it. But before I begin, this key was obtained from NIS America for review purposes. That won't change my opinion of the game in the end, but you should know that because of FTC guidelines, as well as the whole morals thing, you know? Let's start with the options menu, because one of the big criticisms of the Disgaea port on the PC was its lack of options, and I'm happy to say that Stranger of Sword City seems to have gone a little bit further in terms of the options that it offers to people. In terms of audio sliders, you have your music slider, your voice slider, and a distinction between sound effects and environmental sound effects, which in this game I do appreciate because some of the sound effects in the environmental portion can get a little bit annoying. There is no master slider, however, which I would like to see. I also like the configuration of the vocals in terms of I can turn off the NPC voices in particular or leave on the battle voices. The game does give you a couple of options in terms of control in a more generic sense. For example, the game is a first-person dungeon crawler until you get into the battles. The game gives you the option of choosing whether hitting back does a 180-degree turn or to actually step back in terms of the movement. It's a little touch that I like to see, as it helps those fans out there that were raised in different control schemes of those old types of games. The game does offer some options here that I wouldn't expect, however, like removing the minimap entirely, but it does offer a little bit more of a challenge in that case, so I can appreciate it. And yes, it allows you to get rid of the character art in terms of making silhouettes, but honestly, it makes the game less appealing visually, at least for me. This is good to see, however. You've got your choice of window, full screen, and full screen windowed mode, and a reasonable selection of resolutions considering that the game originally debuted on the Xbox 360. It does max out at 1920 by 1200, but again, I believe that's reasonable considering the game's origins, and much better than what Disgaea had to offer. English and Japanese text is available, but note that the voice lines are only in Japanese. There are no dubs here, so keep that in mind. And honestly, given the style of the game, the Japanese audio does work rather well. As you see in the bottom right, the options do have tooltips, but some of them aren't very descriptive. I don't know what effects I'm turning on and off with this effects options, so it could have been done a little bit better. And with things like the upload option, I'm not exactly sure whether it's working or whether I just don't know what it's doing. That could have been made more clear. I never got this load image thing to work. Now, big question, is the game playable with keyboard? Yes, it is, although there is a caveat to that. You do have bindable keys, as you can see here, and you have two sets, so you can bound multiple keys to the same option. Now note the numbers on the side there to things like cancel and strafe, because that will be the annoying part of the PC port, and I'll show you exactly what I mean later on when I get into the gameplay, and show you exactly why you need to remember those numbers in terms of the actions in particular. That's it for the options menu, and I have to say, it does have a reasonable amount for a turn-based RPG dungeon crawler. I don't expect the world here in options for this genre, but this definitely is a step in the right direction since Disgaea for NIS America. Alright, I'm going to load up a game that I've been playing at this point. You will note that I said I had 13 hours in the game, but the one that I'm running on is 6 hours. That will be more towards the gameplay review section that I will have at a later date, but let's just say the first runs didn't go so well for me. Now, the biggest problem for PC players. The keys and questions that were labeled in the options screen are referred to by their numbers, and not the key that they are associated with. This is a silly oversight by the porting team here, especially when the numbers in question could be keys that are used, especially with menus. So now the player has to remember that 5 is Q and 6 is E, and that just seems too cumbersome. It shouldn't be that difficult to associate that within the menus or gameplay, and this is the worst oversight in terms of the port. Now luckily, mouse-wise, all interactables are usable here, and while slower, it does do the job. And once you learn what keys are what and how to get through the menus, you can easily play through the game on the keyboard by itself. It does have controller support, and I played through a majority of the game so far with my Xbox 360 controller, as it does give the labels in question. But okay, what about the performance, as Disgaea showed some major problems on launch? I'm happy to say that up to this point, I haven't seen any performance problems in terms of frame rate or in terms of loading times and the such. Based on what I see here, it's smooth, without frame rate drops. Now granted, it is a dungeon crawling turn-based RPG, but it does clock in at 60 FPS, despite it being not action-oriented. So that is a real plus here. And no crashes to speak of in the first 13 hours. Now I will say that in full screen mode, alt-tabbing once in a while wouldn't bring the game back into context, and I would have to solve it by trying to relaunch the game, failing, and hitting the prompt box to get back the context on the running game. This is solved by full screen windowed mode, however, and I was using full screen for Shadow Play's smaller storage size. So in terms of the PC port side of things, I think things here are a lot better than the Disgaea port on launch, and in fact I think it does a reasonable job. Again, the one thing that I would say are those key bindings and them showing on screen, because that was just freaking annoying. But it is playable, and it isn't going to give you a bad experience. Now, I should probably talk a little bit about the gameplay here, just to give you guys a first impressions at this point. This is a dungeon crawler, and it is a hard dungeon crawler, even at the normal difficulty. You only have the normal and beginning difficulties, but normal does involve you actually having to grind a little bit, especially with the system in place. I like the difficulty here because of the fact that even when going into what seems to be a standard encounter, if you don't take a look at enemies and their levels and things like that, you can get yourself annihilated at that point. Certain enemies may show up in terms of ambushes that are, 15, 20 levels higher than you, and you won't be able to deal with them. What I really like about this game is its ambush system. So basically what you do with the ambush system is you spend a little bit of morale to hide in an area, and you wait for some enemies to pop out. They're going to have equipment boxes that could be useful to you. So for example, in this first ambush, a boomerang comes up. With all the enemies that I have and all the heroes that I have, I don't want the boomerangs at this point. I'd rather have something else, because I don't have anybody in my current party that can use it. But they can use hats, and so I attack these enemies. I basically have to defeat the certain commanders, aka those ones with the crowns that you see on the targeting portion there, and if I do, I get the item in question, and it's usually a bonus of some sort or an improvement. What I really like about this is that it gives you the purpose to grind. Unlike other games where grinding becomes monotonous and you only do it for level, here improving yourself does have a context to it. It does have something that really helps in terms of gameplay. And it's not going to be easy all the time. You're going to run into enemies that are going to give you a lot of problems. So I do appreciate the alternative way of looking at things in terms of Stranger of Sword City. Now, as I said, the game is difficult. It is going to be a system where you're going to have to try things over and over again. I die a lot in this game, not just for my side characters, but actually getting wiped as an entire team. And it is a little bit annoying when you run into an enemy that you really couldn't have guessed was high level than you, but it is a quest that you have to go on in order to further yourself in the game. So it is a little bit annoying in that case. You're going to have to do things over and over again in order to make progress. For some people, that's not a problem. For others, that's going to be a little bit annoying. The character art is beautiful, by the way, in terms of like, okay, you got the cat girl here, the ninja cat girl, and you got the, typical soldier type. Although there is this weird difference between two art styles within that section. I don't know what it is about it, but like you see the guy, the archer on the right there, he is a little bit different than everybody else, and I don't understand why the art style didn't stay consistent. Party-wise, there's a good set of, wizards, clerics, archers, and things like that. And you do have a good amount of customization in terms of picking your character's portraits, your race, your sort of unique attribute. And it is nice to see that you can actually customize the original hero character in terms of his portrait. It usually doesn't give you that options in several of these types of games, but here it's nice to see. I'm also interested to see where they go with the story here. You are a stranger from a foreign land. You crash landed into this, mysterious world where you're overpowered. The strangers that come into this world all have unique abilities and can be able to lift up swords and, deal massive amounts of damage, even though they may not have been, martial artists or sword masters where they came from. And I actually really appreciate the way they described it in terms of the story. Now, with that said, it does set up this unique dynamic of this world and these strangers from the world, and what exactly is causing this sort of, okay, I'm overpowered. What exactly caused that? What exactly am I doing in this world, and how do I get back? The reason why I'm not willing to give a first impressions, formal first impressions at this point and only a port report is that I don't think I'm too far into the game. I don't necessarily do the skill management that I think is available in later parts of the game. And the grind in particular in these games can get really annoying, and I don't want to give you guys a false first impressions by only giving you the first 13 hours. And again, of those first 13 hours, I repeated a good amount of it at this point. So again, even though I don't have my necessarily final thoughts in the game, I did want to give you guys something in terms of the game's release, and in particular for those PC players out there who may have played the game before and are looking to play it again on the PC platform. Anyway, this is Dragnix signing out. I will have a live stream of Ghost 1.0, the guys behind Unepic's new Metroidvania game, tomorrow, and that's when the game sort of releases and I get past the first chapter at this point. But again, expect a full review of this game as soon as I get it done. There's a lot of content to go through here, and I will be putting other content on the channel as I go along. Anyway, I'll see you all later, and have a great day. Thanks for watching. Like the video, share it with a friend, and subscribe if you want more content like this. In the description below, you'll find the Steam review accompanying this vid, along with social media that you can follow me on, Twitter, Google+, and Facebook groups. And if you want to support the channel, click that Patreon on the left of the screen. And remember, keep on gaming.